pressurized. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Like a furry torpedo to the jugular. This is Honey Badger Radio. Radio with bite.
Did you just open the door for that lady? What is wrong with you? Don't you know how misogynistic that is? There's this recurring nightmare that usually hits when I'm at a point in my life when I feel like I've been spinning my wheels instead of making any kind of progress. It starts with my wake-up alarm going off when it's still dark. I'm exhausted and my whole body feels heavy. This is one of those nightmares. You know, where it's hard to move and the lights in the room don't work. There's always a reason for it in the dream. Burnout bulb, can't get my eyes open, something like that. I can get my phone to light up for a second, but it won't stay lit. But I know the layout of the room, so it's not a big problem. I grab my glasses and my phone, get out of bed, and stumble blindly forward. I figure getting out of the room and getting to coffee will solve everything. When I reach for the door, my hand hits the wall instead. I fumble around a bit and realize I'm not standing in front of the door at all. I figure I just moved a bit in the wrong direction. I try using my phone's light. It stays on long enough to show me that the door is a short distance away, then goes out. I start feeling along the wall for the door frame. After longer than it should have taken for me to find it, I light up my phone again. It stays on just long enough for me to look around and see that I've passed the door and I'm in the corner on the other side of it. I orient toward the door and head that way as my phone goes out. I reach for the handle and... Ow. Lighting up my phone again, I see that I had gotten confused and run back into the same corner. I can nearly reach the door frame, even in this position, so as the light's going out, I turn and put my fingertips as close to it as I can. I step forward, both hands touching the wall, sliding my fingers toward the door frame, and a few seconds later... The light from my phone briefly shows me that I've somehow passed the door and gotten all the way around the room. I am now approaching the corner from the other wall with my back to the door itself. Now I am frustrated and angry. How the hell did I do that without noticing I was touching the door or any of the other corners? While my light is on, I lean way back, far enough to get my fingertips on the door frame. As I do, I turn around to face it. I can still see it. As I reach for it, my phone light goes off. This time I have not moved a single step, and I know I did not go back to sleep. I turn on my phone light, and sure enough, I am in the same spot. Now I'm a little scared. I put the tips of my fingers of one hand in the corner and stretch out to reach the door with my other hand. I can't quite get to the door handle, only the frame, but I can at least feel it there. With that to guide me as the light goes out, I slide along, reaching for the handle. Corner! This continues with small variations until I realize it's a nightmare and wake myself, or I fully panic and start running, then smack into the corner hard enough to disrupt the dream, and I wake with my skin crawling. Not at the sense of being trapped, but at the sense of being made wholly, completely ineffective in the face of an otherwise perfectly ordinary situation. It may not seem like much of a nightmare, right? I mean, there's no scary monster trying to kill me, no impending doom approaching the room to create any urgency to escape. It's not on fire, or filling with water, or losing air. It's not a public display like underwear dreams, or a guilt trip like late for school or work dreams. There is only a complete lack of potential for anything I do to affect the outcome of the moment. That is the entirety of the nightmare, the ultimate torment. It isn't the situation itself that horrifies me. It is that nothing I do in the situation makes any difference at all. This is the feminist narrative on sexual violence in a nutshell. In it, women are defined as perpetual victims from birth to death by virtue of our sex. We're presumed, and expected to remain entirely trapped in that identity regardless of our actual circumstances, actions, and experiences. We are not allowed to refuse, and if we defy that rule, our refusal will be punished, or even worse, disregarded. It does not suit the needs of our self-proclaimed feminist benefactors to allow us that refusal. What a cruel, mercenary thing feminism's victim narrative is. A thing I hate with a seething mad passion that boils my guts like molten lava. Imagine spending your entire life being admonished from on high that your actions do not matter. That you live in an environment that continually funnels you into inescapable corners and there is nothing you can or even should do about it. In fact, if you question the inevitability of the situation, shine a light to prevent yourself and others like you from being cornered and seek to come up with an escape plan for times when it happens anyway, your peers will shame and ostracize you for it. They'll hate you, non-person you, for no other reason than because your ideas aren't part of their corner narrative. Imagine being told your whole life that you have to be defenseless at all times because someone else's political narrative relies on your vulnerability, and you're accused of being a monstrous predator should you refuse. Feminist solution to the fear they claim we all carry is not to light the way for women. They want us stumbling around in the dark, lost and unable to avoid ending up in those corners, crying out to them for help. They do not want women to believe we can help ourselves. Their solution is not guidance to help women trapped in corners to find their way out, toward the door, and certainly not for the door to be opened. They do not want women freed from that environment. They want to make careers out of advocating to pad the room so that cornered women won't be injured when they keep running into the same walls over and over. They want to be able to claim to have opened new doors for women when all they've done is find new corners for us to occupy. They strive to convince young women this is how the world is. One giant darkened room where no matter what you do, you find yourself stumbling, lost, and cornered, dependent on feminist initiatives to keep you from being battered and bruised by the walls you can't avoid running into, or at least sympathize with you every time it happens. And this is what they call empowerment. Learned helplessness is empowerment. War is peace. Freedom is slavery. Ignorance is strength. Frailty is power, and incompetence is achievement. Welcome to the mentality of modern feminism, you misogynistic bastards. Complaints will be filed as soon as it's socially, politically, and maybe financially convenient for the complainant to speak out. Hello and welcome to HBR Talk 50, the ballad of the never-ending corner. I'm your host, Hannah Wallen, here with that adorable specter of death, Prim Reaper, she who must be obeyed, Karen Strawn, and our undercover reporter Andrew, who has infiltrated academia, cleverly disguised as himself, and we're going to continue discussing his observations from the recent Title IX Research and Resources Conference at Rowen University. That whole thing has too many R's. I think I should file a complaint. Today, we have more audio from that conference, and we're going to be listening to and commenting on that. Basically, we're continuing on with the audio we were listening to last time, since we only got through the first 20 minutes. And speaking of being treated unfairly before we get into today's topic, you have to listen to a shill. Or two. If you're going to be on YouTube and it starts experiencing platform malfunction syndrome and it won't let you listen to us, we're also on Twitch and Facebook because you can't keep a good badger down. If you want to be sure you'll always be able to catch our live streams, even if YouTube decides to throw us in the gulag for wrongthink, and apparently one of our channels is still in there, or also if you want to catch us in our audio format, remember, go to badgerfeed.com and register to receive notifications. And if you really want to thwart Google's efforts to get rid of our line of thinking, don't forget to like and share this and other Honey Badger live streams. And now on a more serious note, as you know, the judge in our case did find against us in a ruling that was riddled with errors in fact and law, and has multiple points which justify an appeal. In response, our opponents are demanding a huge sum as retribution for Alison's crime of being a woman in comics who openly, publicly dared to refuse to give feminist ideologues permission to whore her out for victim points. Yet, she also refused to shut up about not being whored out, shuffle off into their nasty little corner in which they like to keep women who do not need them, and refrain from contradicting their narrative. So they really are trying to punish her for this. Alison has made a video explaining more detail, and the Honey Badger Brigade is raising funds to appeal the initial ruling. There is a link to the fundraiser and Alison's video in the low bar of this hangout. If you don't support an appeal, we're not asking you to donate, but if you're like me, and you don't want to tell social justice ideologues that we'll roll over and give them whatever they want if they just hit us hard enough, if you do want to see an appeal to this egregiously flawed ruling, click on the link, go to the fundraiser, donate if you can, and whether you can donate or not, spread the word on this by sharing the link to the fundraiser and Alison's video on social media. And with that, on to the main event. Since this is in video form, I have to actually do some manual shit here, so you may hear a noise for a minute or two.
Back to the school, and so
you might just hear me cussing a lot.
UConn, and then being embarrassed with the
Yeah, it just opened. For some reason, instead of going to the next video, it opened the video in another tab. 'Cause that's helpful. But so we'll, as we were going last week, we talked about a couple of things here. The initial part of the video, like the first 10 minutes of it, was the speaker giving her victim credentials. It took her 10 minutes to describe her victim credentials, most of which was, I got kudos from all these places for being a victim. Then we had the victim credentials of the movement, which included the idea that the Jerry Sandusky case, which hinged on hearsay and recovered memory, spoke to the credibility of the movement. Not really something to brag about, really. And let's see if I can get this to play now. So we were at
about 1950-ish.
Yeah, about 1950. I'm going to go back a little bit from that because
it says 2 seconds right now.
Yeah, it's at 2 seconds right now. That's why.
Oh, okay.
So,
I don't want to have a problem like we did last week. Where
no, I have to do this manually, like I said, because it won't add to SciTube as apparently as the with the time code
link with,
it won't do that apparently because like I tried.
That's annoying.
So yeah, that's annoying. But hey, at least SciTube lets me play it. So
Hannah, there's a weird thing.
Yeah. What's
weird? The weird thing is that I'm on the screen for the YouTube, and it's not playing. It says it's waiting
for the SciTube.
No, on the YouTube.
Are you on?
I clicked over to the YouTube.
Are you on the HBR Talk channel or the live streams channel?
Oh, I'm on the Honey Badger radio channel.
Not HBR Talk, but yeah, the radio channel. No, it's in the Gulag. The radio channel's in the Gulag. I set it up every week because we never know for sure. They say they're going to take us out of the Gulag on a certain date, and then they don't do it. So I just set it up every week.
Badger live streams.
Yeah, so Badger live streams is the channel to be on because YouTube is just YouTube. So.
Oh my God! So
YouTube's a piece of shit.
Andrew, could you send me the link? That would be great.
To the SciTube?
No, to the live streams channel.
I want to look at the chats. So
there you are.
All right, thank you.
Isn't it fun though? I mean, that they love us so much that they just want to keep us and hold us in a cell where we can't run away.
Is there a way? Huh. Oh, if you wanted to just look at the live chat, here's a pop out.
Yeah. Well, in any case,
if you don't want to look at the main YouTube thing.
You can pop out the chat. You can watch the
then
the
you can
screen.
the main YouTube channel.
You can see the chats from Twitch and everything if you watch the screen, but you'd have to watch it big because they're going to show small otherwise. So
anyway.
yeah, but anyway.
Oh, it's just the chat. That's beautiful.
Yes.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, if you can copy the URL for the pop-out window. I learned that when I was doing stuff with Mixer yesterday.
Oh
Yes.
my God, that's
Very nice.
That's amazing. That's like something like super awesome that I didn't even know. All right, go ahead.
And now for Tech Chat with the Badgers. No, just kidding. But we're going to go on with the audio so I can mute myself and not have to deal with talking through the sandpaper damage to my throat from outside. It's autumn, guys. I sound horrible and I feel just as bad. But it's only temporary.
Okay.
So we'll start with the audio here, and she's gonna talk about Congress and the Violence Against Women Reauthorization Act and the addition to it that I like to refer to as the Campus False Accuser Protection Act, but that's not what it was called.
Into the Violence Against Women Act in 2012. Now, some of you may not be very familiar with VAWA. The Violence Against Women Act was an amazing piece of legislation that passed and was signed into law around 1994. And it was the first time the federal government really made a strong commitment to ending violence against women, focused largely on domestic violence.
And by the way, guys, stop me, say stop, or say banana, or say, cuss words or whatever if you want to interrupt this.
We'll never get through it if we do that, though.
Okay, but the thing is,
the safe word is banana.
It's an amazing piece of legislation that took an existing piece of legislation and essentially cut men out of all of its protections and benefits and all of that in more than 60 passages. So it essentially just took a gender-neutral piece of legislation and turned it into the feminist utopian legislation that essentially means that only women are ever aggressed upon and only men are ever aggressors. And oh yeah, so it's amazing. It was an amazing piece of legislation.
And they're keeping the name Violence Against Women. They're not like naming it or like going back to a gender neutral name like the family bill was.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, no, the Family Violence Protection and Services Act of 1984, signed into law by Ronald Reagan, was gender neutral. The Violence Against Women Act of 1994, signed into law by Bill Clinton, not so much.
Yeah, supersedes that. I think the Family Violence Act it's still in place, but it's been superseded by the Violence Against Women Act.
Yeah, if a new piece of legislation is passed and it overrides an older piece, then it just overrides.
Yeah. It amends it is the way they put it.
Right, yeah.
It amends it. Yeah, it amends it by
proper
taking
parliamentary terms.
It basically, like, I'm going to bake a 4-tier wedding cake, and it's for all of the guests at the wedding, and it will be decorated with these simple, normal, just regular sugar and butter and cream icing, and nothing fancy schmancy, and there isn't anything in it that anybody's allergic to. Here, have a cake. And along came feminists and went, well, we're gonna cut the cake in half, and we're gonna throw half of it in the trash. Only the women can have the cake, and then we're gonna replace
load it
that
up with walnuts.
Yeah, we're gonna replace the other half with poop and walnuts and LSD, and everybody has to eat it.
No, that'll ruin it. And it's like, no, it won't. Here's lots and lots of poop in it.
And have some more walnuts.
And nails.
Yeah.
Somebody was asking, is it a gay cake?
It's a gay cake. It is it is the gayest of gay cakes.
It's not.
And we're
it's
gonna
not.
force Christian
it's
people to make it just to invite them.
You know why?
Cake. It's just not. It's just not a homosexual cake.
You know why it's not a gay cake?
But you spelled Ghey wrong.
Okay, whatever. But you know why is because I was sitting at the 2012 National Organization for Women conference, listening to a lesbian woman give. She was part of a 3-person panel, right? One was dealing with Indigenous women. It was all Violence Against Women Act stuff. One was dealing with Indigenous women. One was dealing with immigration issues, right? And the third one was a member of the LGBT community, a lesbian woman, who said, "This act as it stands right now does not serve my community, because the language of male perpetrators and female victims does not help lesbian and homosexual male couples." Right? It just doesn't do it. Okay? And she got frozen out of the room. She actually ducked out early, right?
Oh, wow.
To quote, catch a plane. Okay, but she stood up. She gave her her spiel. It was very, very cogent and logical and all of that, right? But she's sitting in front of these like 50 or 60 icy freaking feminists who are just glaring at her until she finally said, "And I'm not saying domestic violence isn't gendered. Of course it's gendered." And then there was like, there was a little bit of this,
Son of a bitch,
you know, and then she's just like, "Okay, I gotta go. I gotta catch a plane," and out she goes, right?
Oh wow!
And I'm watching this, and this was before it was just before it was going to be reauthorized, and it was the Republican bill actually that got authorized.
Oh, yeah, the 2014.
Yeah,
it failed in 2013.
Yeah, it was essentially and the feminist bill didn't get rejected because, or how the feminists put it at the panel was the good bill versus the bad bill. Okay, so the quote good bill, right, didn't get rejected because of any of the gendered language in it or anything like that. It was about funding provisions. They were actually, they had written into it that they would be able to appropriate funds without proper authorization. And so essentially, I think from like fines and fees and stuff from like men who had defaulted on their child support and stuff like that. I don't fucking know, but they had written into something in terms of how to get funding, and it was illegal, and that was why that bill was stopped. It was not stopped because of the gendered provisions, the fact that it was like a rampant, horrible feminist bill. Right, it was rejected over those funding issues, and then a Republican came in and said, "Well, here's a bill," and he ungendered a few things, and that got passed. So,
yeah, unfortunately, what the Republicans have not done is ungender the entire bill, and there's been some pushing for that, and both sides of our political fence, all of our entire political spectrum, is still too gynocentric to recognize that it's violent when women engage in violence against their partners, and whether it's they don't even fully recognize that it's violent when women engage in violence against other women. They don't recognize it at all when it's against men. So,
and this is why I want my major research in my degree to be on male victims of domestic violence, because they can just pass it off so easily, even though there is tons of research that says that domestic violence is much, much, much more equal than a lot of people think it is. Drives me up the wall.
Yeah. So let's get on with the cancer.
All I gotta say is my son, my 16-year-old, is a huge fan of Ronald Reagan, and well, Ronald Reagan passed that initial gender-neutral bill, so that was pretty cool.
He signed that into law. And that was the whole point of that bill, was basically the creation. It was picking up on Aaron Pizzey's starting the shelter movement in the UK. And that the goal of that bill was so that if there was violence in a home, the person who was being victimized, you know, the individual who was not violent could get out and take the kids and go to therapy and either get on with their lives or work with therapists toward reconciliation and a non-violent marriage with the person who had been engaging in the violence. And they recognized in the beginning that both sexes were violent. They recognized that violence was cyclical, that the children would learn it from the parents. They recognized that reconciliation was possible if the couple could learn conflict resolution without engaging in violence. And that all got thrown out the window. That all got thrown out the window when the Violence Against Women Act passed. And that was the goal. That was what feminists wanted. They worked very hard to get rid of that gender-neutral reconciliation approach. But on with the rest of this cancer.
Against women focused largely on domestic violence. It passed pretty much unanimously every single time it was reauthorized until 2012. This is the first year it died in Congress. It did not get reauthorized. That's because we had seen a rise of political change. The Tea Party actually had taken control of the House.
No! No! You stupid cunt!
I knew this was going to happen.
You stupid bitch! It was because the feminists who wrote the reauthorization of the good bill, right, had their hands in pockets that they had no right to have their fucking hands in.
Yep. Yep,
what
exactly.
You stupid whore! Oh my god, I am. Why did I come back on this show?
Because you love us.
Daily dose of rage.
This is talk. This is not the
It's good for heart health, you know, sometimes.
You know, okay, so literally I'm on BuzzFeed yelling at some woman that she's a smug cunt. Okay, and that's like, and you're just making me do it more. Hannah, I hate you.
You use hate in an interesting way when I think you mean love.
God damn it.
Yes, this is how Karen shows love for everyone.
You horrible
and
cunt.
I have to read this too. This is good. French Honey Badger gives us $5 and the chat farts. Says that voice trembles. Make sure to sound as vulnerable as possible while talking about violence against women.
I noticed that too. It's just so weak and pathetic, and she's like, she can barely even speak.
Yeah.
Like, she didn't even take a breath before saying it. She's just like, it passed and it was so awesome, you guys.
Let's see if we can get past where we ended last week.
Xeranx gave us $2 and said, I've missed based Aunt Karen. So,
and then Master Rowe gave $2 earlier in the stream, and he said, Prim! Hug, heart, smiley face. Aww. It's great to see you. Heart, glowy, sparkles.
It's great to see you too, as always.
We love our audience, and our audience loves their badgers.
Mm-hmm. Apparently, there was the one there in there too from Mr. Roboto, who gave us $2 and said,
yes.
Karen's back. What tales do you bring from afar?
I bring no tales that anybody wants to hear about. They're full of grossness and things that I only want to share with my doctor.
Oh boy.
But Bits Belmont says Karen's screeching is delightful. Well, why, thank you. Thank you so much, Bits Belmont.
So let's see what more of this stupid bitch.
Yeah, let's move on.
Yeah, I just also want to point out that bitch credited the Tea Party for things that were not necessarily entirely Tea Party gigs. And Tyler Preston gave us $5 and says, "Why the hell did you even agreed to speak with BuzzFeed in the first place, Karen? Because how the hell else are you gonna get to call somebody a cunt, right, Karen?"
No, I called her a cunt. I called her a cunt on a rant Zerker.
Oh, okay, right? Okay.
And then she played that on the piece that, you know, they put up on Netflix.
So she gave you airtime on Netflix calling her a cunt.
Oh my god.
No, and she okay, and here's the thing. She opened the episode. It was a 16-minute mini documentary on the men's rights movement. Okay. And she opened the episode with me sitting across from her in a like fish and like it was a hipster fish and chip shop.
Yeah.
So it was like, you know, orange roughy in like freaking quinoa, breaded with quinoa, type thing. You know, in Arab spices. So yeah, no, it was like there was like barely anything to even eat there. But so I'm sitting on this hard ass bench, right? With my like no butt. My butt bones are sitting getting bruised, right? On this hard ass bench. The back of the bench is so far away from the front of the table that I can't, you know, so I'm sitting there with no back support while my 2 fractured vertebrae are like putting me in excruciating pain, right? And here's how she opens this. 90 plus minutes of interview time. She used about 2.5 minutes of it, right? She and about 45 seconds of that was her saying, "Well, you seem a lot less aggressive in person." And I'm like, I'm usually pretty polite to people. And then she's like, "Well, that hasn't been the case with me. You haven't been very friendly with me online." And I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And she's like, "Well, you call me a cunt." And I'm like, "Did I?" And she's like, "Are you denying it?" Right? And I'm like, no, I just don't recall. Right?
You probably called a lot of people cunts.
You call everybody cunts.
You know, I just don't recall. And, you know, and then I probably did. And then she's like, "Well, you know, and you were talking about my mouth and blah, blah, blah. You really seem to be fixated, obsessed with like my mouth and, you know, my facial expressions." And I'm like, oh, fuck, that's what it is. Right? It's that rant Zerker, because Alison pauses, and when she pauses and there's like a particularly horrendous or interesting micro expression on somebody's face that lets you know that they're getting away with something. Yeah. Right? Or they know they're getting away with something, or you know that you can tell that they're lying or whatever, they're feeling smug or whatever. So I'm like, oh God, it was that rant Zerker. Right? And so I'm like, okay, you got me. I called you a cunt. And she's like, "Well, do you take it back now that you've met me?" And I'm like, no. And
what are you talking about?
But they literally clipped together like that entire exchange, right? They clipped together like, I don't know, 4 little clips. Some of them from further on in the interview, because they showed me laughing uproariously at my, you know, at when I said that I didn't take it back, right? And it's like, I actually remember saying, no, but that wasn't the response that they put in there. It meant the same thing, but, yeah. You know, and then they put in this, me laughing about it. And I'm like, I didn't laugh about that. I was just like, no, I don't take it back. And, and so like, when they let me know, when the producer emailed me to say, okay, the episode's out there, I watched it, and then I emailed him back, and I said, well, it's a good thing you didn't have a clock on the wall behind me.
No kidding, right?
Yeah.
You know, like, good for you that you figured out that you had to avoid that, because that would have been really embarrassing for you. Yeah. But yeah, it was just it was a fun times.
Back to the audience.
Yeah.
Yeah, BuzzFeed is the sewer of the internet. And Falcon Millennial gave us US $20 and said, "You guys are going to love this. A new female coworker and I went flying this afternoon. She got it into a spin, freaked out. After I landed, we kind talked kind of civil. She said, "No wonder you men fly. Aviation is just sexist."
What?
That's some nonsense
physics,
right
guys.
there.
The laws of physics are
What
totally
the hell?
sexist. Because you cannot change them.
Is
just
she
like
saying
Scotty
that women
says.
can't drive?
I think she is. I think she is. She is saying that. But women can listen to the rest of this cancerous talk.
Yes, let's do it.
Cared about women and violence against women and expanded federal power to address it was not popular within that new political scene. So little did I know, as a student activist who was using my story to kind of push for the Campus Save Act to get into VAWA, I kind of thought it was done once it was in VAWA. That was a done deal. And of course it didn't pass, so all of a sudden I found myself advocating for one of the biggest pieces of federal legislation we have, the Violence Against Women Act. And thankfully in 2013, it did pass. So that Campus Save Act amended the Clery Act and was passed through the Violence Against Women reauthorization that came through in 2013. And on the bottom right, you can see that's me speaking at a press conference on Capitol Hill as a second-year law student.
Okay, I just...
Yeah.
Well, because we should pause it, right?
Yeah, we don't have the pictures.
We have to?
We don't
but
have
we
to.
Don't,
but
we don't have to pause it?
We don't
but
have to pause
I do,
it, but yeah.
I do want to say that given her voice, she actually does sound genuinely nervous.
Yeah, she probably is. I want to point out something about what she just admitted here, though. What she just admitted here is when a piece of legislation, when they don't think they can get a piece of legislation through, because it's not going to be popular, because it's not necessarily good legislation, they slip it into another piece of legislation to get it unnoticed under the radar, and then it passes. And that's what they did with the Campus Save Act. Frenchinator 2 gives us $2 and says, cancer, cancer, and more cancer. But yeah, they sneak things in like that all the time. And I think if we...
I wonder if they snuck in a raise for congressmen.
They may have. They've done that to other legislation. But if we ever have... There's people pushing for a constitutional convention, which would basically be rewriting of the Constitution. And if that ever does happen, one of the things that needs to be put in the, quote, replacement is that if Congress passes a law, it has to be about the thing that, they can't slip other legislation in there. Somehow they need to say the law has to be specific. A bill has to only be about one thing. If you want to pass a law for something else, you have to have another bill, and it can't amend an existing law. You have to have a new law, and you can repeal old laws and replace them, but you can't amend existing laws, because that seems to be how they sneak everything under the radar.
Oh yeah, no, they're like we want to vote ourselves a raise, so let's have a bill against where we actually criminalize kicking puppies, right? Oh, you don't want to approve this omnibus bill that includes all of this other toxic shit and a raise for your elected officials? You must be all about kicking puppies. You just want it to be legal to kick puppies.
Puppy haters.
Unbelievable. There you go.
Doge Gardner gives us $2, US $2, and says, Honey Badger girls are the best girls. And this is like all popping up differently. I have two computers. I'm watching this chat on two computers, and on the desktop computer, everything is like a minute behind. That's hilarious.
Check to see if you're looking at top chat instead of live chat.
Oh no. I'm looking. I'm signed into the multi-chat, and I'm looking at the multi-chat on. Yeah, on two computers, and also the live dashboard. So,
Bilious Fire, that is not cool. Not cool, bro. Not cool. I don't care how much you want to kick puppies. Come over and kick my dog.
There you go.
She deserves it. She's not a puppy anymore.
Yeah. So it's not the. This is not the chat just for the live stream. This is the all chat that has the chat from both live stream channels, from the Twitch channel and everything. So,
yep.
And it's funny, it's the same program, same app, same hookup, same login, same everything, and it's slow on one computer and fast on the other. But anyway, that just tells you what the speed of my computers, I think. On with the cancer.
Nancy Pelosi and a bunch of my other heroes, because again, this one little provision on campus had become controversial, had become a lightning rod, and they wanted a campus survivor to speak about it.
Little provision, yeah.
In addition, there was actually new guidance from the Department of Ed that still exists to this day. It survived DeVos.
Not anymore! It hasn't!
2013 guidance on Title IX is to tell schools not to retaliate. A lot of you may remember the UNC complaint. We'll talk about that in a minute. But one of the big pieces that came away from that, a survivor who had reported dating violence within a dorm, her case had gone through the campus process. They did not find the individual responsible, and she spoke out. She was furious. She was protesting. She was rallying others to protest with her against violence against women on campus. And the school tried to get her into the disciplinary process for harassing him because she wouldn't stay silent, believing that the process had gone wrong.
Well, yeah!
That's not retaliation. I think she's talking about Mattress Girl. It's not retaliation.
So
if you harass somebody after they're found not guilty of a crime, you're not a victim at that point.
My God! Under the law, like we can't. You can't just. Like literally, this is she wants there to be a license to harass, right?
Pretty
so
much.
No, it doesn't. It wouldn't even matter what's.
And only if it supports your own ends, of course.
Oh my God, I'm just like how can, like, when somebody has been found not responsible. On the lowest standard of evidence available, with no due process, right? And a system that's biased against him. Okay, so literally he's not allowed to cross-examine anyone. He's not allowed to present evidence. He's not allowed to have representation. He's not allowed to even sometimes know what he's being accused of when he's being interrogated in front of the panel. Okay, he doesn't necessarily know the name of his accuser or the date or specific incident at issue.
Yeah.
Okay, and he's found not responsible under those conditions. And if this is Mattress Girl and Paul Nungesser, right? He was found not responsible twice.
Yep.
Under those conditions.
Not good enough. He was accused, therefore he is guilty.
Oh my God!
and these people wonder why they have opposition.
Oh my God!
No
and
kidding.
then she just gets to make his life a misery, doing something that would otherwise be criminal.
Yep. More cancer.
Hint to the school, hey, that's called retaliation, and by the way, you can get a monetary fine. Like
a monetary fine! Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! That's like so horrible. They might fine you like $250, and then put you on the retaliation harassers registry, that the federal registry of the retaliatory
She's talking about the
harassers.
school. She's talking about the
this
school.
And kick you out of school and like.
No, she's talking about if the school if the school says if the school retaliates against an accuser, they have this fine they have to pay. But yeah.
By retaliate, it means investigates the person for harassing another student.
Yes, this is something that they should be retaliating if the person's found not responsible. It's called perjury, in court, and since they're trying to make a court system out of schools, then if somebody makes an obviously false allegation and it's found to be false twice, and it's demonstrated that she lied, that should be considered a form of harassment, and she should be investigated for it. And different if there's a dispute. You know, I feel like this event that happened was predatory, and he didn't feel like this event that happened was predatory, and the school says, well, we agree with him. That's one thing. But for somebody to completely make up a bald-faced lie and then make an accusation and drag the guy through 2 tribunals, the original and the appeal, on things that are provable lies, you know, that's a different story. There should be repercussions for that, just the same as there should be repercussions if you file a false complaint with the police, perjure yourself in court, and so on.
But come on, the honey badger should know better than anyone that if a fake harassment claim is made by feminists, that's a way to just get people thrown right out of a convention, right? I mean, come on now.
Yeah,
thou shalt not bear false witness.
Exactly.
I'm starting to become a Christian.
And there was only 10 rules.
Do I have to say I believe in God? I don't. But do I have to say it? Like literally, are these the only people who are sensible, or who are the people who actually read that list of 10 fucking items, 10 fucking things, right? And are like, oh yeah, yeah, those all sound like pretty good ideas.
Yeah.
Moving
God
on.
Damn it.
In 10 seconds, she's going to start talking about EdAct Now and Know Your 9 and a bunch of stuff. Yeah,
well, here we go.
I don't know if we want to. I don't know if we want to listen to that part in full or just allow the breakup.
All right, everybody, hold on to your lunches.
Against survivors who are speaking out. And EdAct Now, which to me is actually the biggest piece of history that I don't think anyone knows. Does anyone in this room know about EdAct Now?
Nobody raised their hands, right?
I'm glad in here that you'll remember this. EdAct Now was an amazing organization effort that turned into Know Your 9. That's really its kind of initial base. So advocates like Alexander Brodsky, who I mentioned, Dana Bolger, myself, Annie Clark, Andrea Pino, and a bunch of other individuals who have listed here, who were activists all over on Tufts campus doing those protests at Harvard, leading our Harvard and a bunch of other locations, came together and said, why are we just on our individual campuses? Shouldn't we be going all the way to the Department of Education and protesting? And that's actually where this photo comes from. That is all of us outside the US Department of Education in July 2013, physically protesting. And we brought with us over 100,000 signatures saying that the department needs to be doing more about Title IX enforcement. This is after the Dear Colleague letter. This is after VAWA. We're still mad, and we're still asking for more. And what we want—
oh yeah, we know you're still mad, and we know you're still asking for more. You stupid cunts.
Oh, you want more.
You are literally like Bender when he was turned into a fucking human, right? He was turned into a human. He got grotesquely fat because he couldn't fucking stop himself from devouring more and more and more and more shit. Then he turned into an 800-pound monster. Nobody even realized he was dead until Woo was released from the folds of his fat. That's you!
Wanted was a list of schools who were under federal investigation to become public. We wanted that list because it was important to us as survivors not to have to speak out and share our stories over and over while we're in school. We're trying to get our education just so that the nation could understand this was a real problem.
Let me rephrase that for her. We, being feminists, wanted schools to be blacklisted forever if they failed to uphold the feminist standard for, all accused men are guilty. That's basically what they were asking for, and they got 100,000 signatures. 100,000 signatures to demand this, but feminists have no power or influence in the world.
Yeah.
That was part of
Capstrong, you can't have your hearing back. Oh wait,
we not only were
it was
able
Davy
to meet with the
1602.
Education Department that day, the White House actually let us have a meeting, not just with the Vice President's office, but also with counsel for the First Lady and the White House Council on Women and Girls. So,
but remember, feminists have no power or influence.
Right.
None.
Yeah, apparently
None.
the patriarchy has all the power.
They're so helpless. Those poor helpless bitches.
we got
Frenchinator
our
2 gives us $2 and says gender studies is not learning.
Nope, it
Well,
is
of
not
course
learning.
not.
you could possibly get as a student activist. And we shared our list of demands, and those list of demands became the White House Task Force to protect students against sexual assault. Students made the White House move.
But, once again, feminists have no power or influence in the world.
None. None. None.
None at all.
Absolutely done.
They only wish they had. Do you remember, Hannah, that there was some woman, I forget what freaking hit piece it was this woman was interviewed on. I thought it was the Vice one on ICMI 14, but it must have been a different one. But she was like, and they accuse us of, like, you know, skewing the family courts, and we only wish feminists had that kind of power. And it's like, I'm just a little girl. I'm going to twirl my hair into pigtails. You know, I just want to jump rope.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have any power. You know, when somebody's calling me on the shit I did, oh, that wasn't me. I don't have any power. I'm just a girl.
Men did this.
Men did this. Yeah.
Yeah.
God.
Tatsumi Tui gave us $1.99 US and said, "Carrot of the North, you have no power here."
You have no power here.
Then we just got another one.
Yeah. Stan. Now stop moving. Not you, Stan. Just the chat. I'm trying to read this long name.
Stan the one and only.
Gave us $5 and said, "Karen, that Bender analogy just cracked me the fuck up."
They are the devourers.
Oh my god. Yeah, but they have no power at all. They made the White House move, but they have no power of all. And hey, we got our sex for the day. Cyberzerk gave us 50 sex and said the SPLC's co-founder Morris D is accused of having sexually assaulted his stepdaughter and beaten his wife. Where have all the good ... smiley face
men gone? Yeah. No. Well, he was accused of, you know, arguably much worse things previous to that, you know, like bilking old ladies out of their freaking Meals on Wheels money because, you know, he stirred up hate and not paying only paying his executive, you know, and board of directors and the executive staff, and then everybody else is a volunteer working tirelessly to get donations to fund non-existent freaking activism and lawsuits.
That all came out more recently.
And build up an empire of hundreds of millions of dollars. So
yeah, the funny thing is those accusations were part of his divorce back in, I think, the 70s. Here he is. He's one of the founders of this organization that has deemed due process advocates who oppose automatic belief of accusations like that in cases like his of being a hate group. So apparently that's his admission of guilt, that if you oppose just automatically adopting as true accusations like the ones that were made against him, you're part of a hate group. So folks, don't be hateful. Believe the accusations. Believe the woman who accused this guy who's called us all a hate group.
I know. He didn't call me a hate group. He called me a male supremacist enabler.
Well, I'm both, because I'm part of Honey Badgers and I'm part of A Voice for Men, and A Voice for Men was outright labeled a hate group by the SPLC.
Yep.
Which I hope a lawsuit comes out of that too, because that's just bullshit. I mean, we've been to court with falsely accused men. A bunch of the guys actually traveled to Maine to go to court with Vladik Filler. I went to court with a young man who now wishes to remain anonymous because he's moving on with his life, and part of the condition that allows him to move on with his life is his anonymity. And then I also went to court with the 7 years in hell case, and you know, so I mean, like that's clearly hateful stuff, right? Defending the falsely accused as best we can by
there are no
their
falsely
cases
accused.
and so on. Yeah, hateful people we are.
Yeah, we must believe everything that a woman says whenever she accuses a man.
Yeah,
of course.
I just wonder if I could like pull a Majid Nawaz and like sue the SPLC for $3.3175 million or whatever he got.
That would be something.
And
moving along,
Tyler Preston gave us US $5 and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, the head writer of Marvel's Captain Marvel movie." And with that, we will have some more cancer.
That is our legacy, and we love to share it with President Obama, but it's our legacy, it was our efforts that led to that. And I remember very distinctly there being a lot of challenge, because of course a lot of us were interns in DC and technically weren't allowed to protest the government while being student interns. So we really put everything on the line, and that's the photo on the top right of us meeting at the White House. And of course we had a lot of things in the news that were still pushing the general public to think and understand that there was a huge problem here. Occidental College had a mass complaint, Laura Alver got in there was a lot of press conferences and ultimately a settlement of those cases, but it was about repeat offenders who were allowed to do it again and again and again. And the campuses had not really taken that seriously yet. And of course, Florida State. If you don't know a lot about the James Winston case, the New York Times did an excellent investigative piece and how corrupt even the criminal system was in that area to really insulate and protect star athletes against claims of sexual assault. And of course, I talked about it a little bit already at University of North Carolina. That's really where Annie Clark and Andrew Ip, who became the stars of the hunting ground. That's where their case came from. They organized students.
Now the hunting ground was who was the individual who created that again?
Oh God, I can't remember who it was, but the cases that they profiled in that documentary, wasn't one of them Caleb Warner's case?
I believe so. I know that there were some things that came out about the hunting ground that basically determined it was completely not a credible piece.
Yeah, no, it was like super biased.
Yeah, like 50 lawyers or something from Harvard, I think, like law professors or something, like wrote a public letter or something denouncing the movie and saying a bunch of shit that like this is wrong or that they're portraying this badly or something. I forget what it was.
It was, it came out essentially that anybody with any sense said it was a piece of propaganda, and that there was not a single case that was profiled in that movie that actually had any credibility to it. So,
yeah,
this is what we're dealing with. Feminists are not trying to protect actual victims of sexual assault. They don't give a shit about actual victims of sexual assault. They never did. They are trying to find ways to create jobs for feminists using the idea of victims of sexual assault as fodder. You have sympathy for victims of sexual assault, therefore you cannot say no to these initiatives that will set up positions to be filled by gender studies majors advocating for these victims of sexual assault.
You got to give them credit for trying to come up with creative ways to make themselves stay relevant.
Yeah. And there has to be an epidemic.
How else are those gender studies people going to find jobs that aren't at Starbucks or their local pharmacy or something?
Exactly.
Well, they're not going to get a job at their local pharmacy because they're not skilled. They don't even have enough skills to count pills.
Well, you don't have to be able to count pills to work at a pharmacy. Most pharmacies have a front store too. So
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you could be the cashier. So.
Right, or I should said like a local not bodega, that's like a New York thing, but just like convenience store. That's the word I was looking for, and I couldn't English hard enough.
Now, I think all gender studies majors should have to work at convenience stores for at least 4 years before they're allowed to hold any other job. I would put them in that position, yeah.
Or as dishwashers.
Yep. So, but more cancer.
And filed, and they caught a lot of attention. So all this pressure is still building. We're getting victories. The 2011 Dear Colleague letter. We're getting VAWA. We're protesting in front of the department. We're getting the White House's attention.
But feminists have no power and no influence.
None.
And in my opinion, it really peaked in 2014. I remember that being the busiest year. Of course, that was when I was graduating law school. And everything was happening. The Hunting Ground came out, and how many of you have seen The Hunting Ground? Pretty much everyone, right? And it's on Netflix now. Anyone can watch it.
Yeah, pretty much everyone. Oh my god, it's on Netflix.
But feminists have no influence and no power. And is the Red Pill on Netflix?
No, it is not. Oh. No, but me calling Sachi Cole a cunt is on Netflix. So
yeah,
there you go.
Nice.
But the Red Pill is not on Netflix. But the Hunting Ground, which was a piece of propaganda, is on Netflix.
Well, and Sachi Cole's freaking treatment of the men's rights movement for BuzzFeed was also a piece of propaganda.
Yeah, and that is, of course, on Netflix. And, and feminists have no power and no influence. None at all. None. They're just a bunch of poor, innocent, helpless little whammons that just can't get anything done because women can't accomplish anything without men.
But when they do accomplish something, then they want more.
Yes. More and more of the things that they couldn't accomplish by themselves and had to go to men to help get them done. Because they're strong, independent women who don't have no power.
And don't need no man.
By this, documentary. And obviously Lady Gaga made a song, and she had everyone come on stage, right? There were all these powerful, amazing moments happening in 2014. UConn, Name That Shame, they lost their lawsuit. It was well over $1 million. I think one plaintiff got about $900,000 alone just for her case. So really big victory showing that there is a price tag to doing it wrong. Carry that weight. A lot of you remember Emma.
God.
Entire year as a protest.
So there have been 2 universities then where it made the news where the accuser harassed the innocent accused for quite some time after the event, because clearly she wasn't talking about sulks a lot the previous time.
I think she was talking about UNC.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not as familiar with that case, but obviously everybody's familiar with Mattress Girl or Mattress Zane, whatever she goes by now.
Everybody's familiar with Emma Sulks a lot because she sought publicity for her sulking.
Emma Sulky bitch.
Yep.
Has had the honor of meeting her father recently, and obviously her story didn't stop there, even though it became a national image. There's been a lot of legal battles and challenges to kind of show you the flip side of this movement, the growing pushback against survivors and their activism. And of course, It's On Us launched, which really was a big project pushed by Vice President Biden as a way to get communities.
Uncle Biden.
Creepy Uncle Joe.
Yep, Mr. doesn't know what to do with his hands.
Creepy Uncle Joe.
Jesus Christ.
And let's make it about us and our activism. It's not on survivors to carry that weight. We're going to lift it with you. We're going to just make this part of our culture and have an ongoing conversation. And that's a nonprofit to this day that's still doing some work out there.
We have too many nonprofits. We need to get rid of a few of these nonprofits, like that one over there.
How much longer is this?
Which part? This is an hour and 9 minute long. She went on for an hour and 9 minutes with shit like this.
Yeah, she was the keynote speaker.
So where are we at?
We are at 2656.
This is gonna take a long time.
Like I said, if she is like, she's kind of gish galloping here, but that's kind of what you do during a speech. And so I expect this to last a few shows. So she's going to be our entertainment for a while. But we'll interrupt the entertaining victim signaling of the keynote speaker of this conference with a couple of super chats. I believe the last one I read was Tyler Preston, so Zerangs gave us US $10 and says, "No credit may be given, Prim. They're socialists decrying the capitalist patriarchy while utilizing their hypergamy to keep it going for their sake." Evil.
Well, of course. I mean...
Hypergamy. Hypergamy. I like hypergamy better because it makes it sound like it's about sexy legs. Doge Gardner gives us US $5 and says, "Don't listen to sexual assault victims if you want to know what they have to say."
Lamau.
Mr. Roboto gives us US $2 and says, "What constitutes a hate group these days?"
You just have to be slightly to the right of Stalin.
Yeah, you have to reject the progressive victim narrative. You have to
intersectional social justice crap. If you find fault with it at all, or any aspect of it, you are a hate group.
Yeah,
even if you're just one person.
Where she made the list to SPLC today. She was sharing it on her social media.
Oh, that is so awesome. I'm so proud of her.
She's called an MRA, even though she says that she's not exactly.
Oh, jeez.
No, I'm so proud of her because, you know, you only get smeared when you're effective.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they have smeared people who want to reform Islam as anti-Islam. If Martin Luther King were alive today, or I'm sorry, Martin Luther were alive today, they would have called him a hate group. If Martin Luther today,
they would have called him an extremist. Yeah,
he was an extremist terrorist. If the Spanish Inquisition was happening today, the Pope who said, "Stop it, this isn't what our church is supposed to be about," they would have called him a hate group. They would have labeled the main body of the Catholic Church a hate group because they wanted to stop the Spanish Inquisition. This is how the SPLC works. And they get tax-exempt status for doing that. They have tax-exempt status for being a professional, and I mean professional because they bring in a lot of money, a professional smear operation.
Yeah, and one that's entirely politically based. They don't list Antifa or ISIS as hate groups.
Right.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, well, they probably have his name on there somewhere. Cyberzert gave us more sex. He gave us another 50 sex and said, "Apropos hate group, #D2. I like that.
Well, actually, it's Morris D's, not Morris D.
So it'd be D's too.
So it would be D's too, which isn't quite as good.
That sounds a little bit innuendo-y.
Yeah, a little bit.
It doesn't roll off the tongue. It doesn't match the Me Too quite as much. But
maybe it's related to D's nuts.
I'm D's nuts. Yeah, I'm a stickler for accuracy. Also, D's nuts.
Yes.
I think we should start referring to the SPLC. We should at SPLC every time that they come up in conversation. At them. And then put #D's nuts.
There we go. D's nuts and those nuts. But on with more, speaking of nuts, of the cancer.
And of course, I already kind of gave the highlight in 2014. We got a White House task force to protect students against sexual assaults. There's nothing cooler in law school than telling your professor, "I'm sorry, I have to go advise the White House. I'm going to miss your class today." But
I'm name dropping and I'm having fun doing it.
Got to do that a few times, and it really was amazing. We had officials from the Department of Health, Catherine Sebelius, if I'm saying that correctly, the former secretary. She was in one of those sessions. Eric Holder was in sessions. I mean, you name it. Every official in the Obama administration had a different listening session that they spearheaded. And at the table were people like you leading amazing efforts on institutions across the country. There were survivors, there was legal experts. They really, in earnest, were listening and trying to figure out what could the White House do most. And sadly, the website that they created.
But remember, feminists have no power and no influence.
Yeah, no. There's no power in claims of women's victimhood.
Not at all.
No power to be had in that at all.
None.
That came out of that task force has been defunct. I wonder how that happened. And all the resources that came with it, but some of us were smart enough and downloaded it. So if you don't have it, there was a lot of amazing materials, sample policies and procedures and different tools to help institutions do it better came out of that task force. And right towards the end, before the administration changed, they actually were looking at high schools.
So there's two things that she just came out with there. One of them is they influenced the government when reform
in a very
happened,
large way.
In a very large way. When reform happened and the government walked back the bad decisions they had made as a result of feminist activism, feminists colluded with universities to bypass the public's wishes and continue to operate in the way the previous administration had set them up to operate. When she said that website was defunct, and some of them were smart and downloaded the stuff and were still sharing it, and you know, here's how you can get your hands on it, and here's how you can continue to use it, and everything. That's what she was basically saying. Just because it was undone, just because the next administration came in and didn't agree with what the previous administration did to bend to our wishes, doesn't mean that the system we created is gone. And this is what I've talked about before when I've said, once they get, they fight and they fight and they fight till they get their foot in their door. Once they get their foot in the door, you can never get it back out. You know, it is.
No, I was
you need
actually
an exterminator to get it back out, and this is exactly what I was talking about.
Yeah, no, I was reading an article on, was it the Daily Caller or the Federalist or something today, right? I think I tweeted it about the new rules, the new guidance, right? Which is all based in law and Supreme Court precedents. So
especially the harassment part, like defining harassment.
Yeah, but it all has the force of law, right? None of it is like the sneaky Ruslan Ali Dear Colleague letter, which had it got no public scrutiny. It did not go through any kind of administrative process, right? It was completely, it had no force of law, but essentially it was an edict, a fiat decreed from on high by one person in that, or by a bureaucratic body within that department that had no authority to do so.
Oh, that's right? The bad part. They do, but it's a very sneaky way. When the education department creates policy, it gets they have 60 days to turn it into Congress, and then if I remember right, Congress has 45 days to say no. If Congress doesn't say no, it is then given the power to be enforced as law. And that's how that works. No oversight. They have the authority, but because all that has to happen is if Congress doesn't say no, that's consent.
There you go. But essentially, that's a good one, Hannah. But essentially, what this does is it actually reestablishes the rule of law, all of the things that, you know, all of the policies that were subject to public comment and debate on the various legislative floors and all of that, right? So, but somebody commenting on that article said, well, you know, the colleges themselves will just do what they want to do, and they won't comply, right? And so you're going to be busy stomping out little fires everywhere for years.
Yep.
Right? Because
what they don't realize is the court
system's
system's going to be, the court system's going to be stomping those fires, because the actual victims, the people that have been falsely accused and had their education interrupted and been dragged through years of essentially court-like harassment, they're going to sue each individual.
Well, they've already sued. I mean, there's been like more than 50.
But they'll be suing more.
They'll have the backing of that policy in the courtroom. They'll be able to say the university did this in direct affront to this policy. They knew about this policy. They knew that the federal government had said they have to afford me my due process rights, and they still tread on them. They still trod all over them. So, you know,
they still stepped on Sneck.
Yeah, they still stepped on Sneck. And now Sneck is going to sue. Sneck is going to sue every chance Sneck gets, and Sneck is going to win, because Sneck is now backed by Education Department policy. And the university said the
requested the opposite of this.
Yeah.
But the thing is too, it's not even like Sneck is going to win now, because Sneck has been winning.
Yeah, Sneck has been winning.
Most of these lawsuits that have been filed, right? And I'm guessing that they're the very strong ones, right? They're the very, very strong ones. Most of the lawsuits that have been filed have been successful. They have either won a judgment or they've gotten the university to settle for huge amounts of money.
And
right?
change policy.
Very few have won judgments. A lot have been settlements that, of course,
there
have been more judgments than setting a precedent and stuff. And such,
well, we don't need to worry about setting a precedent, right? It's essentially like,
well, yeah,
it's essentially like the difference between the Honey Badger appeal and the Count Dankula appeal, right? The Honey Badger appeal, all we need to use is existing precedent, right? That's all we need to do, is we need to put our case forward to the appeal court and use the existing precedent in law and the existing torts as they exist and the existing evidence that was heard at court. And it would be insane for an appeal court to say, yeah, no, dismissed on all 4 causes of action. They might dismiss 1, maybe 2, but they won't find us to be completely out to lunch on all 4 causes of action, right? But Count Dankula's case, there is a statute in place, right? So, I mean, he got a lot of money for his appeal, right? And I'm glad he did. Absolutely glad he did. But he has a way, like, that is like a pipe dream. That is like,
his fight's going to be a lot harder than ours.
When I jerk off and I want to hit the fucking moon with my semen, right? That's essentially where he's at, because he actually has to go against the statutes and against all the precedents, right? We have law and case law in our favor. He has none of that, right? And he has a statute that essentially the only way he can win his appeal is by having the British government say, this criminal statute is actually unconstitutional.
Yeah.
That's a tough sell.
And that's going to be difficult, in particular in the UK, because it's very different from our legal system as well. But
it
doesn't mean that it can be done. What it's going to require is for the court system to realize how unjust that statute is, and how vague and stupid it is, and how bad it makes the UK look to the rest of the world.
It's going to take a brave judge, though.
Yeah, it is going to take a brave judge. Yeah, and I really would love to see him win that case. He's not unrealistic about his chances. He's been pretty open about thinking, talking about how
I'm going to jail.
I'm probably going to go to jail. But
yeah.
it's just, the amount of respect that deserves, him standing up on principle and being willing to go to jail for that, for what he believes in and for what he knows is right. That's just like, that amazes. I love that. I'm very, very angry that he may have to actually go to jail for that. And it's wrong that his country is doing that to him. And it really, it's
a horrible thing. It's a horrible thing that a 17-year-old kid can get brought up on criminal charges for calling a policeman's horse gay.
Yeah, and I just that's actual totalitarianism right there. People wondered, how we ended up, how the hell did Germany get where Germany got? And it's started with tolerating steps like that, where the public had to know this is wrong. Nobody could possibly argue the public, in the public, that what has happened to Count Dankula and what is going on with that law is not wrong. Nobody could possibly look at that and go, "Oh yeah, I'm okay with this," and be serious. I'm okay with this. I would be okay with this being in the hands of my worst enemies. Yeah, no, they can't possibly be serious about that. But they'll condone those little steps because they support the political facet that is in power, or because they are afraid of the political facet that is in power. That is how you end up with Nazi Germany. And that's heartbreaking to me. A lot of my ancestry comes from that area, which I can say about most of Europe and parts of the United States, but a lot of my ancestry comes from there. Those people were warriors. Those people were strong. Those people were proud. And this is what they've turned into. And that just is heartbreaking to me. And to see that happening to a person, to see what happened with Tommy Robinson, that is heartbreaking to me. To see people like those two guys being treated in that manner, thrown under the bus that way by their society. And it just, it's more than heartbreaking. It's just gut-wrenching. It's like, well, Europe's gone, and I hope I'm wrong about that. I hope it can come back. But there's a sense of dread along with that. And that I'm angry about that. But I'm going to continue moving the show on because we got to keep moving the show on. We have 2 super chats I'm going to address. One of them is Doge Gardner, who says, "How can I buy Alison's comics?" Now I'm going to redirect you back to feedthebadger.com. If you just go to feedthebadger.com itself and not the fundraiser for the appeal, and you scroll down past the appeal fundraiser, past the little piggy face, past the little green buttons for different types of support, you will see or contribute to the following projects, and the one in the middle is buy Xenospora, and that's where you can find it. And it has a price goal. That's just because it has to. That doesn't mean anything. But this tells you how to get to it. You can click on "I want to help," and you can go find the comics and you can get them. So if you want Alison's comics, that's how to find those. And then we will go back to. There was another one. Exploding Prinny gave us US $5 and says, "Karen's comment gives new meaning to the phrase, 'to the moon, Alice.'" Yep,
well,
does.
I did read a little bit of Alfred Kinsey, and he was quite interested in measuring distance in that regard. So
that's quite interesting. And then we got one that was tweeted at, or not tweeted at, but directly added Badger live streams. Not a super chat, just a chat. Alison needs to do an autograph special, and we'll suggest that to her. But back to the cancer before my voice just completely gives out.
Institutions do it better came out of that task force. And right towards the end, before the administration changed, they actually were looking at high schools and trying to figure out what guidance makes sense at the high school level. Because obviously, unlike universities that are kind of their own entities with adults more often than minors, There's a lot of things for K through 12 consideration. So that's where we would have kept going if history had not taken an unexpected turn.
I gotta stop it there. My voice is gonna give out. I'm gonna talk about this.
So
they were gonna target elementary and high school. Well, K through 12 is kindergarten through 12.
Yeah.
They were gonna target 6-year-olds with sexual harassment allegations. That's where they were talking about making 6-year-olds vulnerable to being targeted with sexual harassment allegations.
My daughter was 4 when she went into kindergarten.
Yeah. So there could be boys. Most boys don't start till they're 5. Most boys don't start. Most of the kids that start early are girls, and it's because people think that because they're quiet, or most girls are fairly quiet, that makes them ready for kindergartners. And about probably 1 out of 10 girls that starts early actually was ready. But most kids don't have parents like Karen that can judge that. Most kids have parents that listen to the school teachers. Oh yes, she can go in, you know. So, but yeah.
Oh, my daughter could read at 1.5 years old.
Yeah.
So
she could get in there. But then we have Xeranx gave us $5 and said, "Did Hannah or Karen get my tweet regarding the Stop Harassment in NYC?" I didn't get it. I don't think. I may have missed it in the shitstorm of replies I got to one of my I shitposted in a thread one of my own stupid memes. They're not like everybody in the world's not going to know the meme, but it sets feminists off every time, and it mimics their responses to men's rights discussion. And they hate it. They hate having that thrown in their faces. They hate having it pointed out that they do everything they say is toxic masculinity. So every day I'm getting thousands of notifications. So if I miss a notification, it's because I just don't get to see them all.
Overflowed?
Twitter won't show me all of my notifications.
I'm glad that I don't get that many, because it just seems overwhelming past a certain point.
Yeah. Most of them, most of my notifications consist of "You're wrong. The dictionary definition."
Yeah, so. Well, I only get about 300 or so a day, but that's because I don't do much on Twitter.
Yeah,
I still get more YouTube responses. Like, even just at the beginning of everything today, I was like. There was somebody who was like, "Oh, what is it you think that women don't deserve? Respect? Compassion?" And I'm just like, are you having fun putting words in my mouth? Because it looks like you're having fun.
Yeah. These words taste like salt.
Yeah, it's kind of not all that different from what we're listening to this entire show.
Yes, very, very salty. Hoki Bukisa gave us... Oh, well, I should finish up with this. If you want me to see something and you tweet it at me and I don't answer... nag me. I'm not gonna bitch if you tweet it at me 15 times in 3 days. If it's really important, that might be the only way I'll see it.
Agreed.
So yeah. Nag me.
Keep
you have the invitation. I'm asking for it. So.
Did you see that skirt Hannah was wearing? Showed her ankles. She was clearly asking for it.
No. I wore 2 different skirts to ICMI, and neither one of them showed my ankles.
Well, that's good. I mean, you wouldn't want to be accused of being a whore or anything.
They did, however, dye my legs. I had washed those skirts like 2 or 3 times before I went, and they still were so over dyed that I came back to the place we rented with blue legs one day, and just this weird brownish color the next, because there is no such thing as black dye. It's either very dark red or very dark blue, and apparently this was the very dark red one. So
smooth.
That's great. That's excellent.
So now I'm black and blue.
Hey, Hannah.
Yeah.
Hannah.
Yeah.
If you want to fix dye in new clothes, wash them with vinegar.
Yeah, that's what I ended up doing. But yeah, nag me if you want me to see your tweets, and I have not responded to you, because it's probably because I'm getting Basically what I asked for from feminists. I poked the hornet's nest and am watching them buzz around and sitting back going, look at those dumb shits. So Hoki Bakisa gave us US $10 and said, we're failing to socialize our boys to respect women. We need to radically change things up. Maybe we should try letting men do it instead.
That's too much logic there. I don't think we're allowing much. I don't think logic's allowed here.
Use logic.
That seems to be, you know, like that seems to be something that, you know, like I was arguing with a feminist, and she was like, "Well, you know, you might never have experienced like aggressive catcalling, right? But I have." Okay, and I'm like, "Okay, so where do you live, right?" And she's like, I live in a suburb of London. And I'm like, is it one of those council house kind of places that they call men deserts where you can't find a male over the age of 24? And she was like, yeah, how did you know? And I'm like, because the young men in this neighborhood don't know how to fucking behave?
When I hear the term aggressive catcalling, though, all I can think of is, here, kitty, kitty, kitty. I said, here, kitty, get your ass over here. No,
oh my God.
No, aggressive catcalling. Anyway. There we go. And more cancer.
We also had a guidance in 2014 that has, of course, been rescinded. And for those of you that still keep it around, which I recommend you do, it obviously gave some advice about what to do to LGBTQ students, students with different immigration statuses, and really started to broaden the conversation. And really, a lot of the activists from EdAct now were part of those conversations because they themselves were immigrant students and LGBTQ students who wanted their universities to have that conversation, to think more about what their policies and procedures said.
There we have the slipping in of the progressive stack.
And some of you may remember California shocked the nation by coming out and actually making affirmative consent not just a policy on campus, but for every campus within the state. It's not just no means no, it's yes means yes, and that became the state law. And they were the first, and other states have followed. New York has subsequently done it, but not every state has been willing. And VAWA rulemaking committee happened, so we passed the reauthorization in 2013. Of course, government moves slow. We need implementing regulations, which I also hope you have copies of, not just the guidance, but have copies of the regulations. And I was able to serve on that committee as a law student, as a primary negotiator for students. And I came with John Kelly, an EdAct Now and Know Your Nine activist, and together we were at the table sitting next to institutions and experts and officials advocating for what we believe the federal government should interpret the law to mean. And last but not least,
just your brief reminder here that feminists have no power and no influence.
Absolutely.
I just wanna say how boring this woman is.
I know.
Oh
like,
God, it's hard not to fall asleep.
Questions. Well, she's not really, but everything she says sounds like she's just asking questions.
No, but it's like it's not even her tone. It's like she's just like listing off a whole bunch of she's not punching it up at all, and she's not making it interesting, and I'm just bored out of my fucking mind.
I know.
Until she said something really stupid.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, when we want more. Yeah, okay, there you go. Like, we wanted more. Yeah, of course you did, bitch. But it's just this is just really this is lame.
It makes it. This is how they slip things by you, though.
I know.
Being boring, by being boring and puerile and stupid and mundane, and in this boring, puerile, stupid, mundane manner, she slipped under the radar the fact that part of their goal is to get it passed into law in every state that nothing a woman does, a woman's overt, chosen directed, self-directed actions. The things that a woman decides for herself, I am going to do this, and then does them, those don't matter. None of what you do, my worst nightmare, right? None of what you do matters. None of what you do counts. None of what you do has any impact. If he didn't ask your permission, and you didn't say, yes! Because it has to be enthusiastic, right?
Of course.
You know, get out the pom-poms.
Get out the pom-poms. You didn't jump up and down and say, you know, we've got sexy time. Yes, we do. We've got sexy time. How about you?
It's gonna be like the outro to the Man Show with girls jumping on trampolines.
Yeah. Back when Jimmy Kimmel was kind of
actually
funny.
A freaking human being, yeah. And not a pod person.
But
yes,
he did make out with a monkey.
In the cheering.
Yeah.
The word yes has to be included in the cheering, right? Otherwise it's still not consent.
So you can, you know, as a female, you can come into a room where there's a guy passed out drunk, and you can pounce on him, and you can take his dick out of his pants and suck it, and if he didn't ask your permission for you to rape him, then he's a rapist and he raped you. If you didn't say yes, you can be raped by, I give you permission to be my rape victim, then he's guilty of raping you. That's yes means yes, because it's directed specifically in one direction.
Yeah.
And even though feminists will tell you over and over again, oh, this is for both sides, they never ever treat it that way, ever. Every time there's a conflict that comes up between who did what and who initiated and everything else with men and women, the woman is the automatic victim and the man is the automatic perpetrator, even if she started it, even if she took all of the actions, even if he didn't have the capacity to consent. And Hoki Bukisa gives us US $5 and says, whoa, 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 Hannah, what you're describing sounds dangerously close to agency. Don't be unpronounceable version of misogynistic with a lot of letters and numbers in it that I can't, I'll just put this on the screen here and leave it for a minute.
Misogynic code 37 rock 8
See if I can get it to go.
Numbers.
Yeah, and I mean, holy shit, he's right though. I'm a bad feminist. I'm just not very good at feminism. I totally suck at it, and obviously non-consensually. So I have been raped by feminism, guys. I don't know where to get the forms to file the complaints. Can you help me with that?
I don't think you count being an MRA and all.
Aw, shit. Well, there goes my... Dang it, there goes my victim
MRAs don't have legal rights. Don't you know this?
Of course. I guess that means we just have to have a little more cancer. But not very much more, because it's 9:41. So we're going to listen to some more, and we may talk a little bit more, but then we're going to end the show pretty soon here.
Yeah, I think with the next minute and a half, she talks about some roundtables that happened. So the third one we'll probably end up talking about.
Yeah. A minute and a half.
Yes, so we're gonna end this show 30 minutes into this 1 hour and 9 minute long diatribe of hers.
So we got almost 11 minutes there.
Yeah.
Roundtable.
A minute and a half.
So they're still on C-SPAN. If you love C-SPAN and want some clips to watch
later. If you love
later.
C-SPAN.
The first roundtable was on the Clery Act and kind of how that was going and what could be changed. The second roundtable,
I actually don't mind C-SPAN.
We're sitting at, was focused on Title IX, challenges and issues there. And the last, and I think most important to this day, I still reference and cite it for people, is the criminal roundtable. Because this idea of forcing police to be involved against the wishes of the survivor comes up every day. It seems to be repeated over and over. And it, in a nutshell, interesting enough, Senator Clara McCaskill, who had this roundtable, brought it up every roundtable. Shouldn't we make police get involved? Shouldn't we do this? And you can watch every C-SPAN and see survivors like me say, no, we should not, live to a senator's face over and over. And it wasn't until the third roundtable, when it was the FBI and DOJ and all these different entities sitting there saying they're right that stopped becoming part of the federal conversation. So please check those out. They are amazing resources, top officials talking about issues that still exist to this day, including in the criminal section.
Yeah, because totally, like, not getting the police involved in, like, a criminal act is the best way to go about solving your problems.
Here's the problem. There's so many of these accusers or false accusers, they don't want police involved because they know that it's illegal to lie to the police officers during an investigation. It's illegal to file a false complaint. It's illegal to perjure yourself in court. They don't want to push the issue because they fear those laws being enforced. And then you also have situations where people make accusations to get out of having committed some other crime. And if it's proved that the accusation is false, then that crime has been brought to light, and now they can be in trouble for that.
And when I was sitting there thinking, or when she said that the survivors don't want the police involved or whatever, I was like, yeah, you know what, it's easier to get somebody punished under the kangaroo court system. Yeah. Much easier, because the schools typically don't follow the rules, which is why they've been getting sued. And the last presentation we looked at, where like half of the problems were schools not following their own rules, or just being bad at investigating, or not like sharing exculpatory evidence with the students and stuff. They know that the system is fucked against the respondent.
Yeah.
So no shit that they don't want the police involved, because the police would actually probably do their jobs.
Do a real investigation. What really burns me up is when I was a kid, when I was the age that all of the sexual violence I've experienced directly in my life happened before I was a legal adult. Before I was old enough to legally drink, right? During that part of my life, I kept seeing in mainstream media all this talk about feminists fighting to get police to address sexual violence. The Violence Against Women Act, the reason it was passed was to get police to have to address violence that feminists said they were refusing to address. They were refusing, they said, to prosecute, to investigate and prosecute rapes that happened under gray circumstances. There was a movie with Jodie Foster in it where she gets gang raped in a bar and has to struggle to obtain justice in the movie. And all of this it all pointed to the idea that you cannot just ignore sexual violence when it's committed against women. Nobody, of course, was talking about ignoring sexual violence when nobody even brought up men. Nobody brought up male victims at all. Nobody brought up boys. Nobody brought up female perpetrators. That was all, you know, they didn't care about that. But it was all geared toward making the point that when a sexual violence allegation has been made, the cops need to snap to and go get that guy. The prosecuting attorney, the attorney general, you know, whatever, needs to snap to and go after that guy, and the judge needs to snap to and throw the book at him. And now they're saying, you know, we don't necessarily need to get the cops involved. We can just ruin his education trajectory and his career trajectory. We don't have to do anything else. There's no point in getting these sexually violent people, this so-called epidemic of sexually violent people off the streets. Nah, let's just punish them at school. And it's like they turned it around completely. It's like all the stuff that they supposedly were fighting for, everything that mattered back in the 80s and the 90s and clear back to the 70s, all that stuff, nah, it's all gone. Bye. Today's argument is we want to be able to destroy his life, but we don't want to put him in jail, and we don't want to get him off the street. We don't want to keep him from doing it to the next girl. And we sure as shit don't want anybody investigating too deeply into any of these allegations. We don't have to separate the false accusations from the true ones. That's not important. You know, that's the argument today.
Yeah, yeah. It's actually freaking hilarious. And the Louis C.K. thing, right? With everybody, it's like, I think, was it John the Other? Put up a video just recently saying, does Louis C.K. have the right to live?
Yeah.
Because, you know, oh my God, he asked some women, do you mind if I jerk off in front of you? And they said, oh, that would be okay. Three of them said, okay, that would be okay, because I guess they felt bad for him or something, because he was like, he seemed desperate and stupid. And then they giggled the whole time, I guess, is what the impression that I got while he was doing it. And then one of them that he asked, she said no, and so he didn't do it. And so that was his crime. That was his crime. He asked for affirmative consent. He got affirmative consent from 3 women and went ahead with it. And he didn't get affirmative consent from 1 woman, and he didn't go ahead with it. And of course, that is something that, you know, like, there are people who are screeching to high heaven. And okay, for an idiot who freaking apologized and said, well, you know, I should have considered the power dynamics, and, you know, that these women weren't really in a position to refuse consent, even though one of them did. Okay.
Well, like,
yeah.
Okay, so
what kind of message does that send?
I know. But this is what he said, right? My mom would have said, slap him in the face if he freaking crosses the line, right? And so essentially, right? So he apologized, and he was an idiot for doing that. But what he did was brilliant, right? In that when he made his comeback, when he made his debut comeback after months of being persona non grata and in hiding, essentially, he went to some random comedy club in New York, unannounced, okay, just showed up and said to the manager, can I do a set? Right? So he didn't announce it beforehand. Right? And so essentially the audience in that comedy club was an audience of regular people, not the Hollywood elites.
And
right?
not feminist protesters.
And not feminist protesters, so that he could actually test the waters and see if it was okay for him to come back. And when he walked out on stage, he got a standing ovation. And when he did his routine, he got another standing ovation. Right, so clearly the public is prepared for him to come back and re-enter public life. But the feminists are screaming bloody blue murder.
Yeah, and they will. They will
that.
Do that forever, because they're not just objecting to sexual violence. They're objecting to male sexuality, and they will not differentiate between actual sexual violence and their definition of male sexuality as being sexual violence.
I just find it hilarious. I just find it hilarious because it's like, oh my God, he was crucified for masturbating in front of women, when half of his fucking act up until that point was about how much he loves masturbating.
Yeah,
right.
Like, yeah.
He's obsessed with masturbating. And it's like, okay, so everybody thought it was funny until some women were like, it was kind of a little gross, right? Okay, like, yeah, so's the caterpillar freaking squashed on my front porch. That's kind of a little gross. So's when my dog refuses to eat in the morning, and she gets hungry enough that she pukes foamy bile on the floor. That's kind of gross.
Go start a hashtag movement about your dog's bile.
You know, having to hold my kid's hair out of his face because he doesn't want to get his hair cut and he's puking, right? Okay, so that's a little gross. right? Having to inspect your 8-year-old for fucking pinworms. That's a little gross.
Yeah.
Okay, so that would be my 8-year-old's anus for pinworms, right? Okay, so lots of shit in life is a little gross. The dude likes to. He asked your permission, bitch.
Well, I still get so pissed off about that situation. It's like, if they were so, put off by it, why didn't they just walk out of the hotel room? It's not like he had them tied down. They just sat there and giggled at it.
Well,
yeah, okay, well, if you're so bothered, just walk away. It's not that hard.
Feminists make their money.
Or just don't say yes in the first place.
Feminists make their money filling jobs that were created as a result of feminist agitation on the basis of treating women as victims of their own choices. That's that's what they do. That's what they've always done. That's what they will always do. Everything from their birth control narrative is all about treating women as victims of their own choices. Everything from the abortion narrative is all about treating women as victims of their own choices. The sexual violence narrative is almost entirely about treating women as victims of their own choices. They almost never touch on the idea of times when genuine violence occurs. They almost always take it to women can't consent at all, and women's consent is not valid, and if a woman feels bad about sex later on, she's a victim of her own choices. They don't consider the possibility in domestic violence situations that with all of the resources that have been created for getting out of those situations, if a woman stays in a violent home, she is now a victim of her own choices. If a woman starts shit in her home, if she initiates the violence, which is 2/3 of domestic violence, and she gets hit back, she's a victim of her own choices. That's feminism is all about professionally exploiting narratives about women being victims of their own choices and blaming men for those choices. Blaming men for the consequences of those choices. It's like
everything from what major they choose and
and
what toys they pick when they're kids, and
in order to support that,
air conditioning is,
they latch on to this little minority of circumstances in the world where it actually is the fault of an individual man in an individual situation. Where an individual man in an individual situation is dysfunctional.
Prim, I want to tell you that air conditioning is indeed sexist. Okay, it is. Because...
Is it really, though?
Well, it's not intentionally sexist.
Yeah, I mean, it's an inanimate object.
Okay, and it's the people who set the air conditioning are not being intentionally sexist.
So people like me.
Okay, but I will say that most women are more sensitive to extremes of heat and cold than most men. And therefore, the air conditioning is set in such a way, usually in offices, that is uncomfortable to women who go to work in skirts that end above the knee and spaghetti strap tops, and are more comfortable to men who wear a long sleeve button-up shirt, a long trousers, and a blazer.
But you know what the nice thing is?
And a tie. And the nice thing is that the men can't strip down to shorts and an undershirt.
But the women can wear long sleeve shirts, trousers, and a blazer if they
or they could put on a cardigan or something. Okay, they could do that. Yeah, they can. Women could put on more layers. Men
weren't wearing a card before.
God damn it.
God damn it. Women can put on more layers. Men can only take off so many layers before they become unprofessionally dressed. And therefore the air conditioning is set for them.
This is
because
why
they are the ones who are restricted in their wardrobe, whereas women have all of the freedom to wear a sundress in December to the office in sandals if they so choose, right? And complaining about having to put on a sweater just seems cunty.
this is why women need to just all get jobs at Chippendales. That would solve the problem entirely, because then when the men dress down, it is professional. But
there you
that's
go.
the end of that digression.
Well, no, they do dress up. They do dress up. They wear
dress up. They just
tuxedos.
take it off
But
after.
the tuxedos have like snaps along the side
And
that
they come
like
off.
when they just rip them and then they just come off. Yeah.
Yes. So that makes it all even.
Which is excellent. Yeah.
Yes. There we go. So we have some super chats to read before we take off. And we were asked again here. Let's see. I am having to scroll up. We have a lot of stuff in the chat. I'm just going to switch to the screen where all I have is the super chats, because I can do that. And
Ha ha ha.
ha ha ha. So we have Onion Core. That's not Omnicore. Onion Core says,
Slightly different.
is there a way to buy Alison's comic books? So we mentioned this before. If you go to feedthebadger.com and you scroll down past the current thing and the I'm not going to go through it again. I was looking at
Scroll all the way down.
Scroll all the way down to the other projects that you can support. There's a screen that shows other projects you can support, and right in the middle you will see the ability to buy Alison's comics. Ignore the amount goal. And there's not like a time on that I know of, a time limit on that I know of, but you can buy Alison's comics through that. I think that's the only place that she's selling them at this point. Cyberzerk gave us another 50 secs. We got it good tonight. Said there's a discrepancy between virtue signaling and action. The discrepancy between virtue signaling and action. And yes, there is. And last but not least, Tokibukisa gave us US $5 and said it proves that affirmative consent isn't even enough. No means no, and yes means maybe. I'll decide later. And that's correct. As our boring cancer dispenser said, it's never enough. That's not the way she said it. She just said, we want more!
We want more!
We want more! So if they get yes means yes all over the United States, all of a sudden, as in the case of Louis C.K., yes will stop meaning yes, and it'll have to be an enthusiastic, demonstrable, undeniable yes, and eventually that will also stop meaning yes.
Meaning yes.
And at some point, it will be through the chaperone, and only through the chaperone does yes mean yes.
You know, honestly, like, we already have this in Canada.
Yeah.
We already have this set as a legal precedent in Canada, and it will be, it's passed both readings in the House of Parliament, and it is in the Senate. The bill is currently stalled in the Senate. So yeah, no, it should have. If it was a non-problematic bill, it would have passed ages ago. But it's still being scrutinized by the Senate.
Well, let's hope somebody forgot to change the oil for a couple of years, and maybe maybe a head gasket will go through the block and it'll die in that.
I just want to say that this bill ascended to the Senate, and then Senator Cools retired at the mandatory retirement age.
Oh, rip.
She's gone.
That's not good.
She was our best friend in the Senate.
Yep.
Absolutely 100%. And so she's gone. And so I don't know what's going to happen with this bill. And then there's another bill that would make it mandatory for anyone wanting to ascend to the bench to be a judge, to be subjected to mandatory sexual assault adjudication training. And that would probably be administered by the Canadian Judicial Council, who 2 years ago refused to release the contents of the training that they were already providing on a voluntary basis to judges who were already sitting on the bench. There was a lawsuit where a defense lawyer asked to see what the training materials were to see if they would prejudice his client. And the judge in that case essentially pulled a Judge Day. He said, well, you can't prove that you haven't established that the training materials would prejudice a judge against your client. And so therefore, I have no, we feel no need to allow you to see what's contained in those training materials. And the lawyer says, if I don't know what's in the training materials, how do I know whether they'll prejudice the judge against my client?
Yeah, that's a very
and the entire the people involved in this, who aren't even probably aware of it, right? Who are the ones who are really being wronged is the Canadian public, because we literally have judges being trained with training materials that are not transparent to the public.
Now, I want to point out to future audiences who may not be listening to this live, who may not be sympathetic to men's rights issues, you know, out of hand, you know, who may not care about a lot of this stuff. How the public is victimized isn't just your due process rights are at risk. You could someday be subjected to railroading by the court under this type of law. No, there's another type of victimization that you are experiencing. Every body that ends up getting dumped into a jail cell, that has to be fed and housed and clothed and treated under the law for any health concern that comes up, that has to be provided with legal representation, that has to be provided with the representation between the prisoner and the state. All of those expenses, you're paying for them.
Yeah, they're yours.
They're coming out of your taxes, out of your wallet, out of your budget for your household, out of your refrigerator, out of your clothing, out of your shelter, out of your medical treatment. So even if you don't have any sympathy for the person that might happen to, even if you think, I live a good life, I'm a good person, this could never happen to me, this only happens to people that take stupid risks, and I'm not that person, you are still funding it. You are still being ripped off to pay for this shit. And I mean, like, by the way, you're also being ripped off to pay for conferences like this. This is at your expense, too.
Well, and I mean, it's sad, too, that we have to bring it up in those terms for some people to really even think about it. Like, you know, you shouldn't have to wait until it happens to somebody that you know, but seriously, wait until it happens to somebody that you know, not even just yourself, but somebody that you know, and see like how it affects them. Oh my God.
And even if it never does, even if it never happens to anybody that you know, you're being scammed for it. You're paying for it. Your dollars are going towards this shit. You know, and that really bugs the shit out of me. You know, all of this other stuff, all of the issues that we deal with and everything, those are angering, those are enraging, those are things that, you know, you get fired up and you're like, gotta do something about this. But it's one of those things when you hear about, and I'm paying for, on top of all of this other stuff, when I go to the store and I cut corners and I buy the cheap bread, or I take coupons so I can save grocery money, so that maybe, you know, we can afford to go out to a fast food restaurant, you know, on the way to my parents' house 75 miles away. you know, or something like that. I'm scrimping and saving partly because my money is being confiscated by my government to fund this shit, and I am paying to keep people in prison cells that don't belong there. And that, you know, that just, on top of everything else, the fact that they're ripping me off to fund this shit, it's insult to injury. It's one of those, it's like having one of those dried out bits of flesh hanging from your fingernail, and you know if you pull it off it's gonna hurt, but you know if you don't pull it off it's gonna catch on fucking everything, and it's gonna hurt a little bit every time. So you gotta decide, you know, and it's that irritation. It's like, how can you be ripping me off to pay for this thing that pisses me off so bad? How can you do this to people? How can you victimize this many men in the world? How can you victimize this many children in the world? How can you break up all these families? And then on top of all of that shit, you're ripping me off to pay for it.
Yes.
You know?
No,
like,
it's
fucking bastards.
Yeah, no, and it's because they have a supply of coerced money.
Exactly.
That's why they can get away with doing it. If they had to actually get people to pay money the way you would to the Humane Society, or, you know, to PETA, or to Greenpeace, or to the World Wildlife Fund, or, you know, to any other charity, right? You know, they would have to rely on their argument being good enough to convince you, right? Or they'd have to give you something, right? Like, I just got a thing from the Canadian Wildlife Federation or something like that, right? It had a calendar, it had like 8 greeting cards in it, and then a little thing saying, here, send us money. Yeah. And it's like, so they gave me a bunch of shit, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'll send you $10 because this is $10 worth of stuff that you've sent me, right? Like, that's what it would cost me in a store. But, you know, like, essentially, they would have to actually make it worth your while to do it. But the government is not making it worth the while of average everyday people to fund stuff that just keeps costing more and more and more. The more you subsidize single motherhood, the more single motherhood you'll get, and the more you'll have to subsidize it, right? And the more men in 15, 20 years are going to end up behind bars because they were raised by single mothers without
if it takes that long,
strong male role model. And, you know, and so we're seeing all of the fallout from this, and all we're doing, all the government is doing is saying, well, it's kind of like that Ned Flanders episode, you know, we tried nothing and we're all out of ideas.
Yeah. Well, then they want more money to do more of the nothing that they're doing. And
that's right.
And it starts in childhood. I mean, we've mentioned this on a previous show, but the United States, the bastion of world freedom, the nation that is supposed to be the leader in democracy and human rights, incarcerates more children than any other country in the world. And, you know, honestly, that's a travesty. And I'm sorry, my son and my dog are doing mixed martial arts on the living room floor right next to me. So yeah. So like this is what we're dealing with, and this shit, this that we've been listening to, this cancer that we've been listening to, is what is used to promote it, and the government buys it with your money. So that is our end note. You should be pissed off as fuck right about now, which is kind of the goal in getting you this information, is that you respond to it, you make your decisions how you feel about it, and be prepared to act on it by contacting your government officials and saying, you know, stop that. We don't like it. We don't want it, and we're not going to vote for you if you keep doing it. And then follow up by not voting for them if they keep doing it. No matter what party they're from, left or right, because both sides are doing it. And with that, I would like to thank you all for bearing with us as we go through this absolutely toxic litany of victim signaling from this keynote. I would like to thank my co-hosts for listening as well. Thanks, Andrew, for enduring the horror of this Title IX conference, and thanks to everybody again who works in the background to make Badger Talk happen. There's a lot of work in the background that makes Badger Talk happen, that makes HBR Talk happen. So thank you all, and good night.